welcome back to the DJ and Vish show at a new time. When the world says you have to roll your clocks forward, we just moved the show forward an hour, so we hit at the same time. DJ, how's it going, man?
Hey, good. I mean, I'm rolling for life, so I was ready to get going no matter what time change or what time zone we're in. So
Yeah, who knows what time it is, but it is time for the show, that's for sure. Yeah, well, that 10 a.m. would have been rough this morning, I feel. So those
yeah,
extra hours
yeah.
paid off clutch, but we're just gonna leave it at 11 for now. But anyway, so a lot to get to actually this week, given that it's still off season. The Canes have a tight ends coach, had a massive commitment in the middle of the week we're going to talk about, and then we're going to start our spring position previews with what I think is probably one of the ones that people are most worried about, the offensive line. But
Hmm.
let's first start with your position as a coach now, DJ.
Let's go.
So Mario Cristobal went out and hired Mike Viti from Army. He's an Army veteran, and then went and coached there. He's coached offensive line in the past. He's been the tight ends coach there for several years. What are your initial thoughts on this hiring?
Well, you know what? Anytime you can hire a coach from a service academy, that automatically means you're bringing toughness to the position. He spent quite a while at Army actually, from 2015 to 20 to this past season 2026, and Army's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award in 2024, which is given to the best offensive line in the country. So the tight ends will know how to block, is what I'm gathering from this. And he also worked as the fullbacks coach there and served as the director of high school and alumni relations. So that could help in his recruiting and kind of hammer home the point that he has he can build relationships with people and things like that. But I love the fact that he's a service academy coach, and he definitely fits the style of Mario and coaches like Coach Mirabal. And with these types of coaches, they're very detailed, they're very exact, they're very methodical and disciplined in their ways. So I think this fits Mario's style perfectly, and I think this is going to benefit the tight end position tremendously, especially in terms of technique. And like we were talking about the other day, Vish, this room does not have a ton of in-game experience. So I think a lot of coaching is going to have to be done, and a lot of, you know, uh, kind of reminders on the finer points, and moving feet and stuff like that will need to be worked on. So this is a perfect developmental coach as well in that aspect. So all around, that's a long way to say I think this is a really good hire. He kind of covers a lot of areas, and this was a good get for Miami.
Yeah, I agree, and we had spent a lot of time even before the previous hire was made at running back, talking about how important cultural fit is. And Mario, we said, look, we obviously love him. He's a fantastic coach. He is very disciplined. He is very much a work ethic coach, meaning he works his ass off. He's working 24/7, and he expects his staff to follow that lead. This is a great culture fit, like you alluded to. Someone that not just coached at the service academy. I mean, he was in the army, he fought in Afghanistan, Iraq. He played fullback at Army, as they have one of the few schools that still has that position.
Yeah, fullback.
Uh, and then he was there. He coached, running backs, offensive lines, and tight ends there. So they're not a big tight end school because again they run that triple option. So there's not really a tight end traditionally in that position in that offense. But to me, this just reeks of a culture hire. We're gonna have someone that's gonna be disciplined, gonna fit the rest of the staff's work ethic. Um, gonna, like you said, focus on blocking, which is something we talked about during the season, but didn't spend a lot of time talking about in the off season. But every single offensive player needs to be able to block. The receivers block their ass off. Even like Malachi Tony, who's your superstar and is undersized, watch him on a run play. Right, he is getting into it. He's hit the DB. He's blocking, so everyone has to block. And I think this fits really well with that as well. Just emphasis on being physical, tough, blocking. He checks all those boxes, and that's something that it's taken a while to get to culturally here, where everyone really works hard and kind of pushes forward, and that's what's going to be sustainable. Because look, in college sports, I mean, now it's kind of a joke when you get like guys here 7-8 years, but realistically, you're playing 4 years. Because those guys that are here longer, other than the COVID year, they're out with injuries and stuff, so they're not actually playing. So you're playing 4 years, so your whole roster is turning over every 4 years, and now at the portal even more aggressively than that. So it's really important that the coaches set that culture and that approach, and that is the consistent thing. So when new players come in, they adopt that, and you keep rolling forward. And he's just going to fit perfectly with that. I love this hire. Obviously, was not anyone on any of our radars because he had been in Army after serving in the Army and playing football at the academy. He at West Point, he had been, just like you said, just coaching there, which is kind of his home. So I would love a little behind the scenes on how this came together. But given that, I'm sure he's had other opportunities to leave and has chosen not to. But it's a great get for Mario. It's a perfect fit culturally. And I love that we're going to be physical on the lines and physical at the tight end position and kind of lean into what we're good at. Like I think a lot of our success in the past, the flash players like, the Michael Irvins, the guys on the edge, Andre Johnson, all of that, they get the publicity. We were tough on the interior in those years. We did not run some fancy, spread offense. We just run a pro style offense and physically win up front. And then everything else would just work because of that. And I think we're leaning into that culturally. That's how those best teams we had started with the offensive line, which allowed the skill players to shine. And if you don't have the offensive line, you can have the best receiver on the outside. If you can't block the defensive line, it's not going to go anywhere. You can have the best running back. If you can't block and open holes up, it's not going to go anywhere. And so I love this just emphasis on blocking. That's, again, been Mario's hallmark. Like even before these additions to the staff, everyone has to block or you don't get on the field. But this just leans into that even more, which I love. I think it's a great cultural hire, and that was the thing we were concerned about because look, we love where the staff is now. There's been some swings and misses in some of these hires by Mario over the year. Now the good thing is he always, oh crap, and then immediately gets out of there. He's not stubborn. Like when he knows he's made a mistake in hire, he moves. Like we don't end up with the same coach for like 5 years who stays. Like he'll move people around as needed. With that said, I think he's learned exactly what types of coaches he needs around him, and this is perfect for that.
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you too, constant staff changes are a part of college football now too. I mean, you have coaches leaving for different jobs. You have, we joke about players' loyalty and entering the portal, but it seems like coaches are capable of doing it too. So it's been really interesting to see how Mario has built several staffs, has figured out what has and hasn't worked, and has been able to kind of, like you said, adapt to those changes. And I think now he's finally found a staff that has not only had success this past year, but can have sustained success for the foreseeable future. And not only that, I mean, and we've talked about this before, they match his identity. There was, I believe it was 4 years ago, the staff of Josh Gaddis and Charlie Strong, that was all, and some other coaches too, that was all name-based. And, you went with those heavy hitters because of their success in other areas. But if they don't fit, then it's not going to work. So Mario's finally found an identity he wants for his coaching staff, as well as the type of identity he wants to build his program around. And that's hard to do in today's college football.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think he learned over time, though, what he needed. Like you said, that first staff was an all-star staff on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, you had several guys even going to like Frank Ponce, who came on the show or on the Six Ring Cane show. He was offensive coordinator at App State. We hired him to be the quarterbacks coach. Gaddis we stole from Michigan, who had played in the championship game the previous year. I'm like, all right, we're going to hire your offensive coordinator off your staff. Defensively, it was Kevin Steele. Charlie Strong was just coaching the linebackers. So I think he went and said, like, his initial approach was big time football. We're going to bring in these coaches that have proven success records at this level. And it absolutely did not work because he overhired. And what I mean by that is, this is in any business, in any context. You need to find the right person at the right time in their career for the right fit. And having, Texas's former head coach as your linebackers coach seems like a coup. But this is a man that has been, a very successful defensive coordinator at Florida, winning national championships, then head coach at Louisville, where he's very successful. Then went to Texas, kind of more mixed, eventually got fired, went to USF, was their head coach. He's very far removed from actually hands-on coaching linebackers. You bring him in, it looks like a coup. Like, what a hire, man. You got this guy to be your roommate. He's not doing that at this stage in his life. Like, that's just way beyond. He must not have done that in like 20 years by the time we hired him. So it's that people move on, and they're not able to do their old jobs necessarily anymore. They're not the right person. I think he learned that the hard way that first year. Now he's definitely, doubling down, like you said, on kind of guys that fit, that make sense, that are at the right stage in their career for that position.
And not only the right fit in terms of coaching ability, but let's be honest here, with any staff in any sport, there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of egos you got to balance in a room. And, maybe previous staffs, they just couldn't balance the personalities well. I mean, you're talking about, Charlie Strong and Josh Gaddis, two guys who are extremely respected in the college football ranks, and they all have different ideas, and they all have different, things that they've seen at this level that they want to bring to the table. And maybe that may not mesh. And, when I say egos, I mean, if you don't have an ego as a coach, then you might be too passive, or, maybe you're not doing it right. So it's also about trying to fit inside the building and working together, and not only just working together, but making sure you deliver a consistent message to the players. And I think Mario has finally found that coaching staff here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the egos. It is really important.
Yeah.
That these coaches don't think the position they're taking is beneath them.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at like Charlie Strong, your linebackers coach, Ponce going from play calling to not play calling, like all that stuff, like you said, even if unintentional, like when stuff, especially when it started going wrong, in your head you think I can do better than that. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural human reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I look at my own career, right? Like, there's no way I could go do the same job I was doing 20 years ago. I'm way past that for me. Like, if someone tries to like give me direction on how to, I'm like, who do you think you're talking to?
So, Danny, you want to edit that article, right? I don't think this is the right article or right at all.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like once you graduate beyond a position, going back and doing it again is really hard.
Yeah, it's like going back to school,
Yeah, no, it is. So I love the hire. I love the fit. So one last thing on this, and we're going to talk Nick Lanier. So you mentioned, he's got background as offensive line coach, as running backs coach. He played fullback. He coached H-backs. What do you think this means for how we're going to use? Do you think this changes at all how we're going to use our tight ends, especially since I'd say our most talented tight end, and in air quotes on the tight end, given that he kind of is a hybrid player, is that kind of H-back type? Do you think that'll help him develop a little bit, having a tight ends coach like this?
Yeah, and to me, I don't know if this necessarily means we're going to use our tight ends out wide a lot. To me, it seems like more blocking for the running game and then occasionally out of the backfield, but we already don't use our tight ends enough as it is. And then when you add like a blocking tight ends coach, I mean, and I guess that's where he fits well here too, is, our tight ends blocked a lot last year. He's a blocking, former offensive line, teaching blocking and, fullback blocking type of coach. So to me, I think, this means that our tight ends are going to be more of an accessory to the running game and catch passes occasionally. But the good thing about that is when you have enough talent out wide, you don't really necessarily need a tight end, although that kind of hurts my heart to say. But yeah, to me, this means that the tight end is just going to be used to run block, and that's okay when you have the talent like Miami does at wide receiver.
Well, I do think Elijah Lofton is a weapon in the passing game if they can use him correctly, but he is still more of a utility player.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this will help his blocking, especially given, the fullback background of the tight ends coach as well. That is kind of more the position Lofton fits in than actually, a traditional tight end. So maybe it'll help him be a little bit more complete. No, go.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and honestly, maybe they'll actually put him out on the field so that if he needs to catch a pass, he won't be viewed as a decoy where everybody knows he's going to try to at least be involved in the play. I mean, maybe this will make him see the field a little bit more because he's not the tight end one, I don't think so.
Well, he wasn't last year. We don't really have them. We're gonna preview tight ends and receivers next week, so we'll break down the options there. But yeah, no, the tight end. Honestly, I think absent Mario being the head coach, Dawson might go like 4 or 5 wide receiver with this particular roster versus putting a tight end on the field. But like we said, we are a power running team here, and so that's what we're going to be. So that's what he's going to get. That said, there will be tight ends on the field at all times to block. And obviously with our running backs, we're going to want to run the football too. So that's not happening. But if you were just looking at your passing game and where your offensive coordinator's background is, I feel like we'd have a lot of 4 or 5 wide receiver sets with the tight end depth chart versus the wide receiver depth chart.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, speaking of receivers, that room got stronger this week. Nick Lanier from local kid from Miami, one of the top receivers in the 2027 class. I mean, we kind of knew he was a pretty heavy lean to Miami, given his celebrations during the playoff run, and it was pretty clear like he kind of wanted to be here. But he made it official this week at an event where the coaches were present. They didn't know he was going to commit at the time, but he committed. So Nick Lanier is a Miami Hurricane. DJ, what kind of playmaker are the Canes getting here?
Well, from a rankings perspective, 3rd overall wide receiver in the country and the 2nd overall player in the state of Florida for the 2027 cycle per the 24/7 rankings. I mean, Miami, beat out Florida State, LSU, Texas, and USC, and they're getting a playmaking threat. He had 63 receptions for 825 yards and 13 touchdowns last season, and he's a deep ball, big impact playmaker. He is he has the ability to play both the inside and the outside, and he just has that explosiveness that Miami has kind of added to their offense over the past couple classes. So they're just getting another weapon and another big play weapon. It's very clear that Miami wants their wide receivers to possess the ability to explode at any moment and catch the deep pass, and not really a possession receiver, more of a big time playmaker. And again, this just is a good fit for what the Miami offense wants to do. And this is a big pickup. I mean, Florida State, Texas, USC, LSU, those are good programs, well, except maybe Florida State. But the other 3 are pretty solid programs, and big get for Mario and company, and good get for the 2027 cycle. And as always, I know we probably don't have to worry about this here, but we got to worry about keeping him in today's day and age. So, but I think he'll stay with Miami.
And I'm not worried about keeping Lanier. I think he's he'll be he'll be here for sure. And he's also he's a Carroll City product, which, if you're familiar with the Miami area, is just down the road from Hard Rock. So this is like very much a pipeline into the U. Several of our greats have gone there. The Moss brothers, Santana and Cinereese, went there. It's been a while since we've had a stud out of Carroll City, so it's cool to see. And you mentioned, this is just, as I mentioned earlier, this is just stacking receivers already, in case people forgot, Amari Stevens is already in this class. So you've now got, two of the best wide receivers in the country already locked in here. Very similar in terms of explosiveness too, as you mentioned, DJ. So, our best teams were physical inside the hash marks and quick and explosive outside the hash marks. And we're kind of growing back towards that. Where, yeah, I mean, you can imagine a junior Malachi Tony surrounded by these guys. It's gonna be something special in 2027. So yeah, no, it's a great get. It keeps that momentum going, and I think what we're seeing here is just at this point, I think a lot of the stuff we were talking about back when the team was struggling, and people talked about we need this type of recruiting, that type of recruiting, we need to do this. Look, obviously Mario, the staff did a great job identifying kids early, building that relationship, but ultimately, you got to win football games. They got to believe in your program. They can like you personally. They can think, this is a great guy. I trust him. I want to go play for him. But if they don't think your program can do anything, they're not going to come here. Not this level of player. And for years, really before Mario got here, but even at the beginning of his career, we talked about we need to get recruiters in here so they can bring in the talent. I'm like, you need to win first. And not necessarily like make the championship game like we did last year, but win consistently, and then you can stack classes together because then they're going to believe in your program. And we have not done that until the last 2 years. I know obviously last year it's a lot of publicity because we made 40 yards to win the championship, but even the year before that, having Cam Ward win 10 games, we hadn't won 10 games in decades. So winning 10 games, having him then be the number one pick in the draft, that's where the start of it. And then you cement that with another good season. And now, these kids that are local that wanted to stay home, that love the staff, are now saying, I don't have to go somewhere else. Where 5 years ago, when it was, Manny Diaz and Dan Enos, and we didn't enter the red zone, the bowl game, they're like, I got to go somewhere else, even though I want to be.
That was 5 years ago?
Yeah, that was more than 5 years ago, actually.
Either way.
But I mean, those are, and that extended in the beginning of the Mario era, right? Going 5-7. That team looking awful, right? His first year, it's the same. It's an extension there as well, where he's a great recruiter. He's identifying the right kids. He's trying to get them to come here. And they're kind of like, I would love to, but man, I want to play in big games. I want to make the NFL, and frankly, this program's not doing that. And now we are. So that's why you're now seeing. I mean, these kids are locking in early, and like you said, Lanier's not going anywhere. Like, he wants to be a Hurricane. He's always wanted to be a Hurricane, but now it's actually a viable option. And we saw Jeremiah Smith talk about this before the Cotton Bowl. He bluntly said, if I knew Miami was this good, I would have gone there. But at the time,
they weren't. Not
surprisingly, I mean, look, he won the championship at Ohio State. So, like,
maybe he made the right choice at the time.
No, he did make the right, but in his perspective, it makes sense, right? You're like, deciding between these two schools, you want to be at Miami, but you're looking at, like, Miami hasn't done shit in 25 years, and Ohio State's playing and winning big games, not every winning championship. Developing wide receivers, putting them into the first round of the draft, and also just, again, even beyond that, right? Because I think a lot of players believe in their talent, and the NFL will find you. I think there's still an element of, which I think people discount in recruiting, which they should not. They look at how much NIL money you're getting, and then how much, how many draft picks come out of that school and all that. But also a huge factor that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to is, like, this is an experience of a lifetime for these kids playing college football. They want to play in big games. They want to play in big bowl games. They want to play in championship games, especially if you're like Jeremiah Smith, or in this case, Nick Lanier. You can pick any school you want and go there. You want to go to the schools that are going to play in and win big games because you want to be a national champion. And frankly, that was not a realistic option for kids going to Miami until these last couple of years. And so, yeah, it totally made sense for Jeremiah Smith to say, I'm going to go to Ohio State where they don't win the championship, but they're certainly in contention every year. I'm going to have opportunities. And, now people look at Miami and say, I'm going to have opportunities there. And so I think that matters a lot. That's just making it easier to recruit.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I mean, with Brian Hartline gone to USF now, I wonder if, some of the prospects that were originally considering Ohio State over the next couple years will now take a close look at Miami too. I mean, Hartline leaving Ohio State was a big domino to fall. Now, granted, they'll have no problems landing talent, but I'll be interested to see how many kids stay home from that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, there's so much talent in South Florida. There's always some kids that are gonna, say, I'm not, I want to get out. Like, I've lived here my whole life. I want to leave. You're always going to have those kids that.
That's a really good point. A lot of times for these kids, it's not about, Miami doesn't have enough. They just want to go to a different state or have a new experience for college. I mean, there's that.
No, absolutely. There's that. Sometimes, then other times there are kids that want to stay home. They grew up. They're huge fans of the school. They grew up watching it. And they want to go play there. And, one thing holding that back until recently was the performance on the field. It's much easier to recruit when you're winning. And so the Canes arrived there. And then you add that to, there's a financial investment in this program. They're expanding the indoor practice facility, by the way. So things are it's a positive time to be around the program. The results on the field are there. The coaching staff is fantastic. They develop players. We're going to see that in the draft this year. And yeah, there's no downside now to going to Miami. And before it was always, but then are we going to win anything? And now it's not the case anymore. You no longer have to sell, hey, you could be the player. We're players that could bring the program back, like Ruben Bain and Maui Nova. Those are the kids that brought the program back, and now it is back, which is an easier sell than, hey, it hasn't worked in 20 years, but you're the guy that's going to do it. And it's really cool for Bain and Maui Noah that they were the guys that did it, and they committed this program in the mud. And they left it, 40 yards from a championship. This remarkable journey for them, but they've done that work now, and now it's, maintaining it's easier than building it. So.
Yeah. All
right. Well, again, another great get. We'll have the 6-run Cane show tomorrow, and I don't know if Blue and Jazz's schedule's a little muddy off season wise, so we'll see if they join. If they do, I'm sure Blue will have a lot on Nick Lanier as well. I haven't seen him play a ton, so we'll get his perspective. But DJ, we're starting our position previews for the Hurricanes heading into spring, and we're starting with one which I think, if you ask fans what are they most concerned about, this might be it, even though, we talked about now between Mario, Alex Mirabal, and now Mike Viti, they've got 3 offensive line coaches on staff here. But the offensive line lost 4 starters. Lost, obviously, Maui Noah, as we mentioned, Markel Bell, Inez Cooper, and James Brockermeyer. So replacing 4 starters is always a concern, even when people use the cliche, well, I don't worry about offensive line because of Mario and Mirabal. No, losing 4 starters is a big deal. So
yeah,
I guess what are your takes on? We can talk through some names as well, but what is your take overall on the condition of the offensive line heading into spring practice?
These players are going to be really good. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. I'm not giving up on any of these players. I'm just saying for this season in particular, we might have some growing pains this year. I really like the offensive line from an overall view instead of a season view. But as far as a season view is concerned, I do have some questions. Now, they do have really good offensive line coaches, obviously, and Cristobal and Mirabal. But for this particular season alone, I do have a little bit of concern as they develop. And they're going to have to develop on the fly, which isn't easy. So, like the future of the offensive line, not really sure about this year, but we'll see. Maybe trial by fire.
Yeah, it is gonna to be a bit of a work in progress, I feel, as the year goes on. Again, these seasons are so long if the Canes get where they want to go that
Yeah, these guys will be fully developed by the time they get where they want to
there's
go.
time. There's time for that. And look, it's not necessarily an easy start to the season. A couple of ACC games, but not the toughest ones. So, the first 4 games are at Stanford, FAMU, at Wake, Central Michigan. Then you get Clemson, and that's kind of, a step up an opponent on the road. So there are some games that kind of grow into it. There are some things I do like. They lost 4 starters. McCoy's the only one coming back. Samson Open Lola played a lot last year, so I think he'll be comfortable sliding in there. And then I think a big key is going to be how these 2 transfers, Jamal Merriweather and Jonathan Klein, fit. If they fit, they hit the ground running, they integrate well with the rest of the offensive line. That is some experience then that you can use. If not, and you're having to play more of the freshmen, that's problematic. Obviously, I think we've all penciled Jackson Campbell as a day 1 starter. There's going to be a bit of a learning curve there for him, to step up in competition. Yeah. Obviously, from a physical standpoint, he's 100% ready to play. His measurables match, what you would see at the combine. So he's ready to play physically. It's more just, that just getting comfortable playing at this level. So we'll see how that works. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is how well Jonathan Klein and Jamal Merriweather integrate. Because if they do, Ryan Rodriguez has played a bit too. But if you get those 2 guys, and we do like to rotate in alignments. So I'm not necessarily talking about who will start and who won't, because I feel like we always play 6 or 7 linemen. So there's going to be, so you need that kind of depth, right? I think if those 2 are able to kind of fully get up to speed on what Cristobal and Mirabal are trying to do offensive line wise and really fully integrate, then you start talking about, all right, it's not as bad as it was. And from a talent standpoint, I think, Maui Noah, Bell, those are big time. Maui Noah's going to go in the top 10 of the draft. Bell is going to get drafted. Cooper, probably not. Brockmeyer, probably not. So you lost a lot of experience, but there's a couple of draft guys, and Cooper, I think, has a chance to have a long NFL career anyway, so that feels a big loss as well in terms of just he's probably more talented than he gets credit for. But it's not like we lost 5 first-round picks off the line, so there is an opportunity, to build and grow and maybe potentially get a little bit more talented up front, even if less experienced. So we'll see how that plays out. It is, but like you said, DJ, it's a lot. It's going to take a lot of work to get this offensive line where it needs to be, where you're into November, December, January, you're playing in big games, and they are a strength like they were last year. It's going to take a lot of work to get there.
And you make a really good point about the 2 seasons. I always kind of forget that, and then I just think about last year when you compare, the first season last year in comparison to the second half, where we really found our stride. There is something to be said for development there, because we saw a bunch of players really develop strong and play at a high level during the second half, like Pringle, for example, and Fletcher found his form. So I think there is something to be said about developing in season, and I think the extended season allows for players to be able to get more experience under their belt in real time. And when's the national championship game next year? I think it's something like the 27th, right? Or something.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, it's really it's spread out even worse this year. So the big thing that the playoff system has decided, which is idiotic, is they're going to use the New Year's Day bowls as the quarterfinals. So depending on when which means there's 1 game on New Year's Eve and 3 on New Year's, just like this year. Obviously, last year we had the New Year's Eve game. Depending on day of the week that it hits, that can lead to a longer break because they will not go head-to-head with the NFL. And so they will not play like on Saturday and Sunday. And so then they have to obviously at least give like a week off between. They're not trying. It's football. You can't like you don't want a playoff game on 4 days rest or something.
No.
And so this year it hits at the end of the week, which means they then obviously, unless they want to give someone less than a week off, which they're not going to do, they then have to skip the weekend in between. Because if you go 7 days forward, you start hitting the weekend and come all the way wrapped around. So there's like a 10-day gap between the quarterfinals and the semifinals. And if you do the same type of thing, it ends up dragging late into January. I'll pull the exact dates, but that's what essentially happened. The calendar was not kind to the way that they want to do this, which again speaks to why don't you just accelerate the schedule and then and then you don't have to worry about this, but they don't. So
because it would make too much sense. That's why, Vish. It would make too much sense.
Well, I mean, they're trying to hold on to vestigial bowl games and make sure that they're still important and they're played when they're supposed to be played. And I think that's just a problem with the way that the current calendar works. So anyway, the first round games, which hopefully we don't have to play in this, December 18th and 19th. Hold on. So and then Fiesta on December 30th for some reason, and Cotton, Peach, and Rose Bowl on January 1st. There's a gap in between those. And then semifinals are January 14th and 15th. And then the finals January 25th. So there's 2 weeks between the quarters and the semis. And then the finals. The finals always on MLK Day too, which is good because it's a holiday. But yeah. That scheduling split up. I don't know why why there's nothing on Thursday the 31st. Yeah, because 20th. I mean, in a way, it's a good idea because people are like not necessarily, focused on football that night. But then they resumed on December 31st, 2027. So 27, 28. They did the same thing, so they did December 31st that year. So I don't know what's happening next year where they didn't want to do it, but anyway. So yeah, it'll be the Fiesta Bowl is one of the quarters finals. That's on December 30th. The other 3 are the Cotton, Peach, and Rose Bowl, which are on January 1st, and then the semifinals are almost 2 weeks later. January 14th, one of the semifinals is here, Orange Bowl. January 15th is the other one in the Sugar Bowl. And then the championship game is in Vegas on the 25th. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully the Canes, do well, finish highly ranked, and that'll, angle them towards potentially playing, getting a bye. Peach Bowl will be the most advantageous first round game. Yeah. And then obviously if they're ranked high enough, they'll get a path through the Orange Bowl. So Peach Bowl, Orange Bowl, and then Vegas is a lot less travel than last year. Texas twice, and then Phoenix is like we keep saying everyone. This team has to fix there's some big losses off of last year's team. They're gonna have to grow into the season. But doing that while winning will be critical to preventing having to run that gauntlet they did last year. Winning a road SEC game, beating Ohio State, who everyone thought was the best team in the country until we kind of physically dominated them. Then having to go out to Phoenix and play the Fiesta Bowl. If you look at the path that Indiana got versus us, they were 9-day difference. Now, Indiana absolutely 100% earned that, and we did not. They didn't lose to SMU and Louisville, right? We did. So They earned that. But they definitely got they got an Alabama team that wasn't very good, frankly. Probably shouldn't have been in the playoffs. And then they got an Oregon team who was on life support at that point with half their team in the portal. But that they earned that. And that's what we got to take care of business in the regular season to earn an easier path, because while I think next year's team can win the championship, and that's the goal, obviously, once you lose in the championship, there's only one thing left to do, right? That's the goal. If they try to navigate that same path that the 2025 team did, it's not going to end well. They got to do better in the regular season.
Yeah, the 2025 team had a lot of experience and a lot of experience in big games, like Carson Beck obviously did, and this team I think can do that, but it's not as veteran laden as last year's group.
Well, let's be real. I mean, last year's group struggled a little bit in the middle of the season, but at the beginning of the season were, I think, clearly the best team in the country. And then, after that loss to SMU, killed everyone. Like, those games weren't competitive. Like, they kind of got in a groove, but then, I mean, look, it's Texas A&M. It's 5 yards from forcing overtime. Ohio State was actually probably the easiest win, but even then, there were some clutch third down conversions on that last drive where Ohio State gets the ball back with a chance to win. Ole Miss, you scored the winning touchdown with less than a minute left. Like, that was very hard. Mm-hmm. And the answer is, can you replicate that run? Probably not. But you don't have to. You can have the Indiana path. And again, they earned it. I'm not saying that they got it easy. They did not. They earned it in the regular season. That's what you got to do. You got to take care of those regular season games, win the ACC, get a higher seed, and it'll be much easier to then turn around and win the championship.
Absolutely.
What they did everything as hard as possible last year. and they almost pulled it off, but eventually, you play those tight, tough games over and over again. The interception happened at the end of the Indiana game. Eventually, it isn't going to go your way. If you watch that last drive against Ole Miss, like how many third downs we converted, how many clutch throws, clutch play here, just ridiculous. Like that, you're making all these plays. If you are asked to do that time and time again, eventually it's not going to bounce your way. You're going to have the miscommunication we did at the end of the championship game. That's why you got to stay out of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Indiana didn't play a competitive game in the playoffs until the championship game.
Yeah.
If they had played 3 games like the championship game, it's very possible one of those balls doesn't bounce their way. I mean, if Keelan Murray and Carson Beck are on the same page, that's probably a completion. And we're sitting there 10 yards from the end zone, and we probably win the game. But that's not the way it went. But when you consistently put yourself in those, it's going to come down to a play or two. Eventually, the play is not going to go your way. Bryce Fitzgerald made the interception. We converted a bunch of third downs against Ohio State and then punched the ball in. We made that drive against Ole Miss to win the game. We didn't make the drive. We almost did, but we didn't. And, for everything to break your way 4 times in a row is very unlikely, and it didn't happen. But if you get an easier path where you can comfortably win some of these games, and then you take that chance element out of it. I think that's the goal next year, is to put together a stronger regular season, like you were talking about. And this is in the context of the offensive line with the whole team. It's such a long season. So by the end of the year, you can be polished enough to be a complete team. Coming into the year, you're probably not going to be. So it's important to win those games while you're getting your sea legs. And then, peak towards the end and then have an easier path so that, we can win this playoff game by 2 touchdowns, versus, but again, the path we set up for ourselves, there's no way you're winning those games by 2 touchdowns.
No.
You're not going into College Station and winning by 20 points. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to beat Ohio State by 20 points. You're not going to beat Ole Miss by 20 points. Those teams are too good. So it's just, but if you get an easier path, there are playoff teams you can beat by 20 points if you get a
JMU, Tulane. I mean,
I don't think we'd really be playing those teams because the bye teams don't get to play those. But even playing the lower seeded, like the best team gets to play the 8-9. Like we didn't play a team that bad the entire. We played the 7, the 2, and the 6, and the 1.
Yeah.
Indiana played the 9, the 5, and the 10. Not granted, we're the 10, but still.
Yeah.
You know, so but I mean, there's easier paths, and that's where we go.
Yeah, and like you
Shout
said,
out to
doesn't
friend
have
of
to
the
be.
show, Kubice. Yeah, yep. Let's keep riding the momentum. The off season's gone well so far. Just gotta keep it rolling.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with the offseason so far. I mean, there are a lot of holes to fill, and I think they did well in the transfer portal. There are a lot of new faces and new places, like you said, on the offensive line, tight ends coach, quarterback, and so there's going to be a lot of interesting things to watch for during the course of spring ball. I don't put all the stock into spring ball. I don't live and die by spring ball, but it'll be important just to get these new faces integrated into the program and see what happens, and hopefully a lot of tight end action.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that, DJ. That last part.
I know. I'll be sad, but hey, you know what?
Maybe it'll be at the optimal moment. Elijah Lofton will come good and catch the winning touchdown in the championship game or something.
Maybe. I mean, tight end one should be able to do that. So I would hope so.
Well, I mean, let's more seriously. A lot of it depends on like Mensa's decision making and where he chooses to go with the football. Cam Ward threw a lot more of the tight ends than Carson Beck did. Part of that's personnel as well. Like Elijah Roy was not on last year's team, so if you had him out there, you're probably throwing the tight end a lot more. But
can you imagine Elijah Royo at last year's team? That would have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, oh well. Well, it didn't help that Lofton got injured, obviously, too, and we're really out of tight ends by the championship game. But
I do think we're going to see a lot of Cooper Barkate action next season, kind of like the Ward Restrepo connection of a couple years ago. So,
yeah, no, I think obviously he's got the pre-existing relationship with Mensa, but yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. Obviously, Malachi's going to see the ball a lot. This is a great segue to next week's show, DJ. We're going to talk receivers and tight ends next week. So good way to end this week's show. We'll be back again. This is our new time, 11 p.m. We've decided we will not
11 a.m.
6
p.m. a.m.
Oh, Jesus. Well, anyway, my brain scrambled because of this time change, but we will not succumb to the daylight savings gods. This show is now at 11 a.m., which is actually 10 a.m. previously. We are pushing forward at the exact same Earth access time versus actual time. Anyway, we'll be back next week at 11 a.m. Sunday. We'll be we'll talk. Obviously, any news that happens in the intervening time, we're still looking for a defensive backs coach. So,
do you think we see one this week, or do you think we see it kind of drag down?
I think so. I think it'll happen pretty soon. At this point, we're almost into spring practice. So
yeah, true.
But we will. If there's a defensive backs coach hire, we'll talk about that as well as any other commits. But then for our spring position breakdown, we'll talk wide receivers and tight ends. So join us for that on next Sunday at 11 a.m. I mean, you can watch it at 11 p.m. It lives on YouTube forever. So if you want to tune in at 11 p.m., the show will be on. It's available on demand at any time after 11 a.m. But if you want the live show at 11 a.m., DJ, thanks for joining me on this Sunday morning.
Absolutely. It was a close one. Time change almost got me, but here we are.
All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week. And join us for Sixers Canes tomorrow at 8:30 as well. And go Canes.
Go Canes.